Good evening, YouTube. I'm back with another video. And this video is going to be about the revelations of the end time. And like always, I'm going to start with scripture. So what I searched was dreams, and visions. And the first thing that popped up was Joel chapter 2, verse 28. But as always, I'm going to probably start at the beginning so we can get a full understanding of what is trying to be portrayed or what is being said. And as you can see, I have a lot of highlighted verses in Joel chapter 2. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness. Excuse me. This is a same day video, so my sinuses and allergies still kicking my ass. A day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon upon the mountains. A great people and a strong, there hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness, yea, and nothing shall escape them. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen, so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap, like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Before their face the people shall be much pained. All faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. And they shall march every one on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks. Neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk every one in his path. And when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. They shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They shall climb up upon the houses. They shall enter in at the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. And the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great. For he is strong that executeth his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible, and who can abide it? The mercy of the Lord. Therefore also now, saith the Lord, turn ye even to me with all your heart, and with fasting, and with weeping, and with mourning. And rend your heart, and not your garments, and turn in unto the Lord your God. For he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and repenteth him of the evil. Who knoweth if he will return and repent, and leave a blessing behind him, even a meat offering and a drink offering unto the Lord your God? Blow the trumpet in Zion, sanctify a fast, call a solemn assembly. Gather the people, sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children, and those that suck the breast. Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet. Let the priest, the ministers of the Lord, weep between the porch and the altar. And let them say, Spare thy people, O Lord, and give not thine heritage to reproach, that the heathen should rule over them. Excuse me. Wherefore should they say among the people, where is their God? Then will the Lord be jealous for his land and pity his people. Yea, the Lord will answer and say unto his people, Behold, I will send you corn, and wine, and oil, and ye shall be satisfied therewith. And I will no more make you a reproach among the heathen. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face toward the east sea, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. Fear not, O land, be glad and rejoice, for the Lord will do great things. Be not afraid, ye beasts of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness do spring. For the tree beareth her fruit, the fig tree and the vine do yield their strength. Be glad then, ye children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God. For he hath given you the former rain moderately, and he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain, and the latter rain in the first month. And the floor shall be full of wheat, and the vat shall overflow with wine and oil. And I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten, the cankerworm, and the caterpillar, and the palmer worm, my great army which I sent among you. And ye shall eat in plenty, and be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God, that hath dealt wondrously with you. And my people shall never be ashamed. And ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am the Lord your God, and none else, and my people shall never be ashamed. The outpouring of God's Spirit. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, your younger men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my Spirit. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and the terrible day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall come on the name call, and it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord hath said, and in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. So there's that word remnant again. So, as I stated in the previous video, or read in the previous video, supposedly there was a remnant of the tribes of Israel that came to the Americas. But you can clearly see that there will be a larger remnant that will be saved from the coming of the Lord, from the coming of the Most High. If you read in the book of Revelations, it tells you that nothing on the earth shall be harmed until they are the 12 tribes are sealed. 12,000 from each tribe, which would be the 144,000. So, with that being said, my point of reading this one, well, this chapter and these verses, was because of the outpouring of God's Spirit. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. When I first began my spiritual journey, I had a lot of deja vu, and I had sleep frequent sleep paralysis. And anybody who's had sleep paralysis knows that it's a very scary feeling to have sleep paralysis. It brings about the emotional fear when you have sleep paralysis. When you have sleep paralysis, you are basically lying in bed or wherever you're lying down. You're laying there and you're essentially or basically you're awake, but you can't move your body. You can't open your eyes. You can't move your mouth, but you know for a fact that you are awake. Some people can open their eyes, and they say that when they open their eyes, they see demons or witches. I've never been able to open my eyes when I had sleep paralysis, so I couldn't say. But my point of bringing that up is because one day, while I was still on my spiritual journey and still smoking weed, I was in a very low state of mind because I felt like I had made it to my lowest point, and I was sleeping on my mother's couch, and I was still in the process of getting myself back together, bringing myself back up through the grace and the support of the Most High. So as I laid on the couch, I woke up, but I couldn't open my eyes. And I knew in that moment that I was having sleep paralysis. But it was different this time. Now, before I continue with the story, some people believe that you can contact demons. Some people believe that you can contact angels. Some people believe you can contact your higher self. Some people believe you can contact aliens. Some people believe you can get in contact with all of those figures or deities. So my point in saying that is that no matter what you believe I was in contact with, I know for a fact that it helped me on my spiritual journey. Whether you believe I was in contact with a demon, whether you believe I was in contact with an angel or an alien, I know for a fact that it helped me on my spiritual journey. Did it change my beliefs? No, it didn't. Did it verify or solidify my beliefs? In a way, it did. And before I continue, you have to understand that I had this dream vision before I read the books on the Anunnaki or the Lost Book of Enki, or before I read the Book of Enoch, or before I really started diving deep into the scriptures in the Bible, or started researching Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology and religion, Sumerian mythology and religion, Native American mythology. Before I really dove deep into my research into the spiritual, I had this dream vision. And it came about through sleep paralysis. So, in this dream vision that I had, which lasted for about, I'll say probably about 10 minutes, but it felt like 30 minutes to an hour worth of information. You have to understand that time is perceived differently in the spiritual world. It tells you in the scriptures that a day is to 1,000 years and 1,000 years is to a day in the spiritual world. So it felt like in the physical, it was probably about 10 minutes worth of information, but in the spiritual, it was 30 minutes to an hour worth of information. So a deity came to me and basically gave me the recount or the account of creation. It started from the highest point and ended at the lowest point. So I've been wanting to make this video for a while, and I never just really felt led by the spirit or got around to making this video. But now, since I've been frequently making more videos, I feel like it's time to make this video. So, the story of creation as told by my dream vision. There was nothingness. There was darkness. There was the void of space. And this void of space, this darkness, was actually a creature or I'm not looking for the word deity, but for lack of better words, it was a deity. It was both masculine and feminine. When I say that, I'm talking about spiritual energies. I'm not talking about from a physical standpoint, it was male and female. It was a transgender or something like that. I'm saying that it had both masculine and feminine properties or attributes. From this deity, not procreating with itself, but what's the word? From this deity came asexual reproduction. So the Big Bang was basically this deity, this void of space, this darkness, having asexual reproduction. So if you read the book of Genesis, the first chapter, it says that there was nothing, and that basically the Most High said, "Let there be light," and there was light. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. It doesn't say that he created the heaven and the earth first, though. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So there's that darkness. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So basically, it's recounting the Big Bang theory. What you have to understand about science is that science is just magic called by another name. If you were to go to the past, if you were able to time travel and go into the past 1,000 years ago with a cell phone and it actually still worked, they would call that magic. But we today call it science. So when you look at the Big Bang Theory from a scientific standpoint, it's basically recounting the creation story from the book of Genesis. It's two sides of the same coin, just told from different perspectives. They give you a physical breakdown of how the world and the universe was created, or the galaxy was created, and the planets and the stars were created. The Bible and other spiritual books give you a spiritual standpoint, a spiritual perspective on the creation story. So to continue, this deity or this being had asexual reproduction and created the universe. From that point on, there were two separate factions, basically. There was the light side and there was the dark side. There were those that were of the father and those that were of the mother. the mother being the dark side, the father being the light side. They all came from the same deity, from the same being. They all came from the father and the mother, but there were some that were more akin to the father and some that were more akin to the mother. So we were at our highest point as Adam and Eve were. We were at our highest point in the spiritual plane, in the spiritual world. But as time grew on, like I said, time is different in the spiritual world. So as time moved on, it moved at a slower pace. We were children, but we had the mindsets of adults and the mentalities of children. As time went on, we basically broke the rules of the Most High, or broke the commandments of the Most High. And the biggest rule of the Most High was not to create before you were ready, not to create life before you were ready, before you were mature enough to create life. And we broke that solemn vow, we broke that rule not to create life before we were mature enough to understand what bringing life into the world meant. So after we broke that rule, there was basically what you call the war in heaven. There was a war between the father and the mother and the children because of what the children had done in creating life before they were mature enough to understand what creating life meant. The children lost. In the Greek mythology, the children win and the parents lose. But in my dream vision, the children lost. And subsequently, they were cast out of heaven into their own creation, which they created their own dimension. They created their own universe with planets, stars, galaxies, plant life, life basically. So they lost the war and were cast into their own creation. They were still not on a physical level yet. We were still not on a physical level yet. We were still in the spiritual when we were cast out into our own creation. We were cast out into our own creation as a sentence of learning what it meant to create life. And we were only cast out for a certain period of time. So once we were cast out, like I said, time moves differently in the spiritual world. We were cast out and we fell, but we fell at a very slow rate. If to us, it felt like we were falling for thousands of hundreds of millions of years. But from a physical standpoint, we fell very rapidly, and it only took a few hours for us to fall into the physical world. So we would fall slowly into the physical existence. In each plane that we fell to, we would establish a society. And we would have different nations, different tribes. And some would be more akin to the mother or the dark side, and some would be more akin to the father or the light side. Now, when I say dark and light, I don't mean it to mean positive and negative or good and bad. Those are just physical adjectives added to theories that we don't necessarily understand. So I'm not saying light and dark as to mean good and bad. The dark side or the mother's side was positive energy, and the father's side or the light side was negative energy. And if you know anything about the spirituality of the universe, it all revolves around duality: masculine, feminine, positive, negative. That's as far as it goes, though. It doesn't go good and bad, good and evil. It goes positive, negative, with neutral in between. It goes masculine and feminine with neutral in between. And when I say neutral, I don't mean transgender. And I just want to get that point across, not to say that I have anything against transgenders, but I have to get that point across because someone will look at this video or listen to this video and be like, he's trying to get people to be transgender. He's trying to bring on a transgender agenda, and I'm really not. I'm honestly not. I could care less what your sexual preference is. What I'm speaking on is strictly from a spiritual standpoint. So we would fall to different dimensions or different spiritual planes above the physical plane. And when we would fall, we would stay there for 1,000 years, 2,000, 3,000 years, and we would set up societies. We all lived together, we all mingled together, but you had some nations or some peoples that were more akin to the mother, and some nations and some people that were more akin to the father. As time went on and we started falling more rapidly, the closer we got to the physical plane, wars ensued between our peoples, between our brethren, between our brothers and sisters, between us. You had some that followed the ideals of the father and some that followed the ideals of the mother, which caused controversy and division between our peoples. And then that's where the neutral part of our peoples came from. There were some that were basically from a standpoint, taking a stand of, I neither adhere to the beliefs of the father or the beliefs of the mother, or I believe in both the beliefs of the father and the beliefs of the mother. So those who were neutral basically stayed out of the affairs of the dark and the light side factions. They were basically hid themselves away from the affairs and the wars of the dark and light side factions. They stayed secluded and out of the way, basically. So every time we fell, it was because of a war that ensued between our people, based on the ideals and the opinions of the two factions. So we finally get to a place where we are just above the physical plane. This would be the angels in heaven. And if you believe that we weren't angels in heaven at one point, you are sadly mistaken and possibly delusional, because we are spiritual beings in a physical body. We have souls and spirits. We are not just physical beings. And if you believe so, then you also believe that upon your death that you will go nowhere. You just die. When everything in life is contrary to that fact or that opinion that you believe. So we were basically right above the physical plane on like the fourth or fifth dimension. And we were basically looking down on our creation. And we saw that there were different animals upon the earth. We saw that there were primates, basically. We saw that there were reptiles. We saw that there were birds or fowl. We saw that there were fish. So these creatures are the creatures that went through evolution. And they basically went through time differently from how we did. So they had to adjust to the conditions of what was taking place on the physical world. And that is how their evolutions took place. So indeed, you had primates that walked on two legs and looked like what they call prehistoric man, or what they call Bigfoot. And with us looking down on our creation, we took it upon ourselves to make a pact, basically, that we knew that it was inevitable for us to fall into the physical, but there was no way to sustain us in the physical without taking on physical bodies. And in Anunnaki, this is where you get the creation story. In the book of Enki. In the book of Enki, you have beings that came from heaven that basically genetically altered beings that were already on the earth, so that they would be able to sustain their spiritual bodies. So we basically made a pact that we would find a being already on the earth that we could modify to be able to sustain our spirits and our souls, because we knew it was inevitable for us to fall into the physical. But if we weren't able to be sustained in the physical, we would all die off as a people. We would become extinct. So one faction took different attributes from different animals and created a being from the earth, from clay, from water, from different species of animals on the earth: reptiles, amphibians, fish, primates. If you look at your anatomy, you can obviously tell that you have certain attributes of different animals. You have canine teeth. If you're able to move your tongue the right way, it secretes saliva like a snake secretes venom from the bottom of its tongue. Um, before we before we are created in the womb, we are sperm cells which look like tadpoles. And I could go on and on. We are bipedal, or move on two legs and 2 feet like primates do, like gorillas and chimpanzees, but we didn't come from them. So that's what one faction did. The other faction actually took primates and basically mixed their DNA in with the DNA of the primates. They put their DNA in the DNA of the primates and created a being that could sustain them. You had one faction that believed that these beings were so civilized or so intelligent that they deserved a place in heaven. And then you had one faction that believed that these beings were so stupid or dumb that all they were used for were labor as slaves. So a war began again, and we finally fell into the physical. Once we fell into the physical, we were still on a higher spiritual vibration. We were still highly spiritually intelligent. We started creating societies again. We started creating civilizations. We started creating buildings and structures that could help us retain our spirituality. But on the other hand, the other faction ended up in the Caucasus Mountains. And they continued to experiment on primates until they got the perfect being, for them at least. Until they got the perfect being that could sustain their spirituality. And those beings were brought up within the Caucasus Mountains. They weren't exposed to sunlight like the other faction's creation was. I am saying something, and hopefully you understand what I'm saying. So, even then, wars ensued, but on a physical level this time. And with us being so highly spiritual, we had no reason to speak or record our knowledge. There were different peoples on the earth because of the process of creating the perfect beings to sustain our spirituality. So this is how you got the Asians. This is how you got the Africans. This is how you got the Mexicans or the Hispanics. This is how you got the Indians in India. This is how you got the Europeans. This is how you got those different nationalities. They were already on the earth or populating the earth because of the creation of trial and error of trying to create the perfect being. So One faction would actually live with these peoples. They would show them how to be civilized. They would show them how to write. They would show them how to um, keep up their self-hygiene. They would teach them how to create a functioning society. And then when they felt that they were ready, they would have them write down the accounts of their history, because they knew that eventually they would forget where they came from. They would forget their history. So, with that being said, the faction that lived in the Caucasus Mountains, or the Caucasus Mountains, basically created slaves for themselves. That's all those beings that they created were meant to be. That's what they created them for, as slaves. But they also created them as warriors to fight the other faction. So this is where you get the seed of Satan and the seed of God from, or the seed of Satan and the seed of Adam. Cain and Abel were brothers. They were supposedly twins, but one was of God and the other was not. Cain was basically the seed of Satan, because both Satan and Adam had intercourse with Eve, and she birthed Cain and Abel. And the Most High told her and the serpent, or Satan, that he would put enmity between his seed and their seed. He would put enmity between the seed of the serpent and the seed of Adam and Eve, which was Abel, even though they had other children. So when people ask if Adam and Eve were the first people created, where did the other people come from? There were already other people on earth. Adam and Eve were not the first beings created. They were the first perfected beings created. And this is what my dream vision was showing me. This is what the deity or entity was showing me. So the faction that created a more intelligent being knew that with everything that was going on, they were still falling on a spiritual level. Their spiritual vibrations were becoming more low, as attuned with the frequency of the earth, which is on the third dimension, the second dimension, and the first dimension. So they knew that they were going to forget their history and where they came from. So the other beings that were already on the earth prior to the creation of the perfect being, they taught them to be more civilized to a point where they could save their accounts of where they came from. So this is what the entity showed me about what happened next. What happened next is that the faction of the Caucasus Mountains started a campaign against the other faction that lived in modern day Africa, more to the point, modern day Egypt and the surrounding areas, India, Asia, what they call Israel, and also Australia. They started a campaign against them. And This is what happened next. The mother that created these beings, being so full of sorrow, decided that her children would probably never learn their lesson, so she thought to destroy them. So she sent an asteroid or a um planet like heavenly body or a planet like asteroid to destroy her children's creation. What happened was it didn't destroy her children's creation, and it didn't destroy her children. The first time it came around, it just narrowly missed the earth. But it caused so much destruction and death that only half of her children remained, or maybe even a little over half of her children remained. What happens after this is that this asteroid or this planet-like asteroid is stuck in an orbit around the Earth, but it's a long orbit. So it only orbits the Earth every 100 like 100+ years to 1,000+ years. So it's basically like the mother continually sending this object to the earth to destroy her children. But it didn't work. Sometimes it gets closer to the earth, sometimes it's far away from the earth. But it still revolves around the earth and the sun and the moon. It comes into close proximity to all three. So the people from the Caucasus Mountains or the Caucasus Mountains start a campaign against the more intelligent beings. They are polar opposites. So they are constantly warring against each other. Every time that they have a war, they cause so much death and destruction that there is what we call a nuclear winter. There is a winter so cold. If you know anything about the cold air, if you know anything about cold in general, the cold makes you subservient. The cold makes you more docile. The cold makes you less aggressive because it plays on your anatomy. It makes you so cold that you basically don't want to do anything. Like you don't have that aggressive nature that you used to have, as opposed to it being summer or spring, or it being warmer, basically. So they would cause so much death and destruction that they would cause what we call a nuclear winter. And if you know anything about hypothermia, eventually you get so cold that it's like you go into a deep sleep before you die. In nature, there is a frog that hibernates by slowing down its heart rate so slow that you would think it's dead, but it's not. its heart rate slows down to so many beats per second, so slow that it has the appearance of being dead, but it's actually not. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because once we bring about nuclear winter through these wars, or once we had brought about nuclear winter through these wars that we were having, all of our people between both factions would go to sleep. They would be in a state of hibernation. It would be so cold that our people would become docile, and it would be the appearance of them being dead, but actually they are still alive. And with one faction knowing that they were losing their memories of where they came from, they were losing their history of where they came from, before they would go to sleep, they would save a people. Both factions would save a certain number of people and give them the accounts of their history to hold on to until they awoke again. And once they awoke again, they would be lost. They wouldn't have their memory of who they were. So then they would be able to go to those people and get the written accounts of who they were and where they came from and remember who they are as a people. So in my dream vision, we had 3 such wars on the physical plane that caused a nuclear winter to where we would wake up and we wouldn't have knowledge of who we were as a people. But we would always go to the people who we gave our written accounts to and get our knowledge from them of who we were as a people. Both factions did so. But it got to a point where the faction from the Caucasus Mountains would choose a people to hold on to their written accounts before they went to sleep. But they would also give them certain instructions on what to do after they went to sleep. And those people would basically set up certain traps, mental traps, for the other faction, the more intelligent beings, after they woke up. So as time progressed, these traps were set in place for the more intelligent beings to where they no longer had an account of who they was or who they were, because the peoples that were already on the earth, the nations that were already on the earth, had basically come together with the beings from the Caucasus Mountains and made a plan to do away with the more intelligent beings. They made a pact that they would inherit the earth, that they would enslave the more intelligent beings and keep or destroy the knowledge of who they were as a people, and give them only the knowledge that they wanted them to know, as to keep them mentally enslaved and believing that they were something other than who they truly were. If you look at society today, you can understand in part my dream vision, because what they're doing now is the same thing that they've been doing for thousands of years, as told by my dream vision. They're trying to start a nuclear war. They're trying to have people in fear. They're trying to put the world in fear so that the world would basically give up their rights with no argument, no rebellion, and they can have their new world order set in place, set up before everything goes to shit. Both factions go to sleep. And then when we reawaken, we'll reawaken to a new world order. Nuclear winter is basically you have so much nuclear debris, so much um, nuclear smoke that it blocks out the sun and causes winter. So World War III, or the theory of World War III, is based on nuclear weapons. World War III is thought to be fought using nuclear weapons and EMPs. If that is the case, more than half the world's population would be destroyed. But it would also cause nuclear winter. And it would cause the people to be so docile that they would conform to any form of stability within their society, which would be the New World Order. The thing about it is, more and more of our people are waking up because this is supposed to be the end time. This is supposed to be the last war. This is supposed to be the last time that we have to go through this. And supposedly all of our people are supposed to wake up before this takes place, so that when it does take place, we'll know exactly what's going on, and we'll know for a fact that if we do go to sleep, when we wake up, we will have retained our knowledge of who we are as a people, where we came from, and where we are going, as to not be enslaved once we reawaken, or once we awaken. Now, I've told you all that my beliefs differ from a lot of the world's religions. And I believe that once you look at certain things from a spiritual standpoint, you have a different outlook on what you've learned from being taught by religion. And the reason I say this is because, and the reason I bring this up is because in religion, one man's God is another man's devil. And I think I've said that before. One deity that you might call your God, that same deity is somebody else's devil. So the entity that came to me in this dream vision was Lucifer, was named Lucifer. And I don't see it as a negative entity. I don't see it as a satanic entity. I didn't feel any negative energies or negative vibes from this entity. And if you read the Bible, then you know that it calls Lucifer the son of the morning, or the great morning star. But also in the New Testament, Jesus calls himself the great morning star. So if you believe in Jesus, if you believe Jesus is the Son of God and all that, then You also have to believe that you are praying to Lucifer. And you would find that hard to believe, but it's right there in the Bible. So, what I'm basically saying is you have to understand that everything about religion isn't so black and white, isn't so good and evil or good and bad. There's a thin line in between the truth and the lie. There is a veil over our eyes, and we have to uncover this veil, or allow the Most High or the Holy Spirit to uncover this veil over our eyes. Now, I'm not saying any of this to try to convert people into Satanism, or to convert people to believe that Lucifer is their savior, or to convert people into worshiping Lucifer, because I certainly don't. I most certainly don't. I worship the Most High first and foremost. I don't worship any other entity or deity before the Most High or with the Most High. I worship the Most High and the Most High alone. So let's get that understood. So if anybody would watch this video and tell you something contrary or contradictory to the fact, I'm stating it now that I only worship the Most High God. The Most High God of Israel, Yisrael. The Most High God of the Hebrews. The Most High God spoken of in the Bible that sent prophets to the lost tribes of Israel. I don't worship any other deity besides that. So I want to thank you all for tuning in and watching this video and listening to this video. And hopefully my next video, I can bring some good information, something that we can all learn from, and something that's going to be controversial that'll have people thinking outside of the box, because that's what this channel is about. So until next time, thank you for watching.